This is going to be incredibly hard to explain, but I want to try anyway. Mainly because I really need to just get this off of my chest. I have no idea what I saw or what I was in for, and still to this day, I have not gotten an explanation. I was in Egypt at the time this happened, working on a special project of some kind. I'm not going into any specifics, so if that is what you're looking for, you will not get it from me. I will just say that this project was funded by the United States, and so was the team that I was a part of. We were in Egypt due to an excavation that was underway underneath a pyramid. Now, this wasn't the pyramids in Giza that are well known and surprisingly close to civilization. This was actually a pyramid located basically in the middle of nowhere in Saqqara. When this happened, the pyramid had been barred off for multiple months, and guards and barriers had been placed to block it off for civilian access. I won't go into the whys or the hows, but during the excavation process and a more thorough exploration of this pyramid, I and a team of 3 other people actually uncovered something. We managed to stumble on a previously undiscovered section of the pyramid. Interestingly, it was actually hidden behind what I can only describe as a false stone wall. Due to its age, it was beginning to crumble, and due to it not being as thick as other walls in the structure, it was easier to determine whether there was something beyond. And there was. There was a massive gaping hole with no kind of barriers of indication. The hole was literally just a massive, deep black void, unguarded, and it must have been maybe 5 meters in diameter or so, if I had to estimate just from memory. It was gigantic, and no one had any idea why or how anything like this was hidden down here, or what its purpose was. When the wall was knocked down, some idiot almost fell into it, and if he did, that would have been it. Even shining a light down the thing, we could not see how deep it went. No amount of high-powered flashlights would reach the bottom. So we were mobilized and instructed to descend into the hole using safety gear. It was a little more complicated than that, obviously, but I do not want to bog the story down and make it too technical. We had engineers that did their thing and estimated the depth of the hole, who drew up safety measures and the like. It took weeks for it to go through. We didn't just jump down there on a whim. Once all 4 of us finally hit the bottom, we realized that we were in some kind of a narrow tunnel system. Not like a dug-out tunnel system though. It was more like spelunking into a cave. It was more naturally formed. We were worried at first that we would not be able to squeeze through the gaps with the gear that we had, but we did manage it eventually. I remember that about halfway through, I got stuck. I could feel the ceiling pressing down on my back, and I could not get any momentum to force myself further through the gap. I had to get the guy behind me to push me by using his legs to push my ass forward, basically kicking me. It took a good couple of minutes for me to push through inch by inch, and let me tell you, it was a relief when I finally did. I was so panicked and anxious, thinking maybe I might be stuck permanently and we would have to waste time and resources and delay the mission to bring down specialist gear just to free me. It smelled horrible down there in those tunnels. You obviously had the smell of dirt and soil, but there was another smell too. It was the smell of something rancid. It smelled like dying and rotting plant life, but even worse than that. The humidity in the air did not help. Being down there, with that humidity, it made every movement I made feel like it took twice as much effort. I was sweating buckets by the time I managed to squeeze myself through the last part of those tunnels. Sweeping our flashlights around, we discovered that we were not in a chamber, but it was almost this weird square stone room, different to the stone in the structure above. This was more cave-like stone rather than crafted stone. The room was strange, and it was not the only one. There was a stone panel, like a divider of some kind, sticking out from the wall, which is weird because it was also made out of naturally formed stone, so how did this happen? And tucked into the corner of this was some kind of a bed. Only it wasn't a bed. It had raised sides also made of stone, but instead of being flat and smooth, it actually sunk in, and there was a space below it. It was more like a coffin than a bed. There was some kind of a liquid in the bottom that smelled like bad plumbing. It was black, but not fully. It looked like when you dip your paintbrush into the pot and it mixes with the water and makes it really murky. There was not anything else in there aside from some kind of moss-type growth that looked really disgusting. Aside from that, there were some types of scratches or carvings on the walls, not in any kind of identifiable pattern. It looked like someone took a piece of rock or something and dragged it across the wall in a straight line again and again, so much so that even the lines in the stone were worn and seemed to have been made a long time ago. That was that entire room. Proceeding further on, we found 3 more rooms identical to this one, which all seemed to just loop back on one another continuously. All of those stone coffin-like things were mostly empty, although one had an object inside of it. It was ceramic, and looked to be some kind of a vase or an urn. It was quite tall, probably came up to around my abdomen, and I'm around 5'8" in height. I got someone else to help me lift it slightly off the ground, and we kind of shook the thing slightly from side to side, but I could not hear anything inside. I did not dare to tip it over. In another one of the rooms, we actually found valuables in the room. There looked to be some kinds of artifacts, some kind of gems as well that had lost their shine over the years. On the wall in this same room, there was some kind of a stone tablet that was partially mounted on some kind of a pillar. The pillar was barely off of the ground now, and it looked like most of the stone beneath it had crumbled away to dust, but this tablet was still mounted on the top, and looked to be carved with hieroglyphics of some kind. We made sure to take pictures for our language experts, but it did not look like any hieroglyphics I'd ever seen before. Granted, I am not an expert, but if you learn any modicum of history, you've definitely seen at least a few of those symbols before and can remember them. None of the ones that I had seen before were present though. In the final room of these identical rooms is where we found something horrible and unexpected. It was not inside the stone coffin. It was actually partially pressed into the wall. It was the remains of what I can only assume used to be a person, but it was completely charred, as if the body had been set alight and had burned for a long time. There were just tiny black bits crumbling off, and there were actually still scorch marks on the stone near to where the body was. There was a sickening smell in the air. Interestingly, there was something else around the body. There was a puddle of something, but it was not blood. At least, it didn't look like it. It was around the body in an expanded pool, but it was fully black and looked to have solidified and was actually risen off of the ground. And there was some kind of material strewn around. It looked like bandages that had been soaked in something and left to rot for a long time. Something thicker than gauze, something less medical maybe. We had to leave there very quickly because the smell was getting to all of us. It was giving me a headache. It took a little while, but we found another crawl space in between the loop of these identical rooms. We had to get onto our stomachs and shuffle again, but when we did, we came out to this chamber that was just massive. It was really something to behold. The ceiling was really large. There were elaborate stone carvings on all of the walls. None of us really got the time to explore and take all of these things in because of what was at the end of the chamber. There was something slumped up against the wall, but it was not a charred mass like in the identical stone rooms. In fact, it looked like it was chained to the wall by its arms and its legs. There were a few of them actually, all just chained to the wall. They were covered head to toe in what I think were bandages that looked stained and rotten. We got closer with our flashlights to take a look. We were so focused on the sight in front of us that we were not really paying that much attention to what was underneath our feet, and I stepped in something. Multiple somethings. Because closer to these things, spread all over the floor, were more charred remains, the same as in the other room. What I could only imagine were charred bodies just scattered everywhere. Some were mostly just fine powder. Some were split at the center and were not even attached to each other anymore. When I stepped on one of these remains, I heard a horrible crunching sound, and it released a horrible odor. It smelled like a rotten tooth. We took pictures of the entire place, and were discussing whether maybe it was time to leave back to the surface and share what we found. We had other work that we had to do, and it would take a while for the entire place to be scoured and for things to be documented and translated. So for the next little while, most of us are just prepping things and getting ready to head back through the crawl space, taking some last pictures, making some last notes, when I noticed one of the guys, who I will call A, getting closer to the chained bodies. I asked him what he was doing, and he very quickly turned and shushed me aggressively. I asked him again, and watched dumbfounded as he got close to the thing and poked it in the head. I asked what the hell was wrong with him, and he told me he swore he saw it move. Immediately, I think this guy is going insane and just seeing shadows, maybe just a trick of the light. I could smell something horrible again, and within minutes, I began to hear a weird rattling sound. It sounded like bones rattling back and forth on top of each other. I could not see anything going on, and I kept spinning my flashlight around. A let out a shout at one point, and I could see he had fallen onto his ass. One of the corpses, the one furthest away from him, it looked to be shaking, like if a person was convulsing. That horrible smell was just getting stronger and stronger by the second. And all of a sudden, it just stopped, and after a few seconds of silence, I hear this horrible, low and guttural wheezing sound, like a smoker taking a deep, long breath. I see this thing moving, and by now, we are all shitting our pants. A has not moved fully away yet. He has taken out his camera and is recording and talking to himself. I can't really hear what he's saying. This thing tries to rise up, but is pulled back from the chains attached to the wall. I was surprised that they even held, given how long they must have been down there and how rusted they must have been. But the thing took its arms and pulled until the chain was taut, and then just kept on pulling and pulling and pulling until the arm just snapped, and then it just pulled itself free. It continued to do this until it pulled all of its limbs free, and it was standing upright, with all of its limbs bent at these horrible angles. What I was seeing should not have been possible. You might call me a schizo, a liar, a fantasist, but I swear, this is what I saw. I can still hardly come to terms with it myself. It made these horrible movements, and I could hear the sounds of bones snapping with each and every single step that this thing took. By this time, I'm telling the rest of the team to get the fuck out of here. One guy is already trying to wiggle his fat ass through the crawl space with all of the gear on. He's panicking, and he cannot get himself through, and the other team member is having to help squeeze him in. At one point, I just tell him to leave his fucking gear and to get out, and he complies. He just whips all of it off and just starts going. No one else can do anything until he's moved far enough for us to squeeze in. So when I look back, all I can do is watch in horror as this thing has somehow gotten right up to A's face. I don't know why he hasn't run or moved away or anything like that. It's currently grasping and clinging onto his arm with, I don't even know. It wasn't even a hand anymore. There was nothing human there anymore. This thing's face was just wrapped in moldy and yellow bandages, but there were just gaping black holes where the eyes and mouth should be. A is not moving. I have no idea why. He's not turning around, twitching his muscles, trying to fight back. We are shouting at him and telling him to run or struggle or fight back, and he is just not listening. He's just like frozen on the spot. And all of a sudden, I just hear that horrible wheezing sound again. It sounds even worse now, like this thing is wheezing through some kind of mucus or water even, and I see something coming out of the thing that goes into the air. It's like a cloud, a thick black cloud, and it covers his face before dissipating upwards into the air. And he starts choking. He is clutching at his throat, and he is down on his knees. The thing is not moving or doing anything anymore. It's let go of A and is just watching, or I mean, it looks like the thing is watching, I couldn't really tell because it had no eyes. Eventually, A is down on the floor, and my other team member still with me. He gets the bright idea to run over to A to try and help him. I tell him not to, and I try to stop him and drag him back, but he does not let me. He starts trying to drag A towards me, but this thing, it grabs him. It grabs him by the back of the neck, and I see his eyes just go blank, and all of a sudden, he is just standing there and staring off into space. And this thing just digs its hand, or whatever is in place of hands, it just digs it into his neck. I can see blood. I don't know. By this point, I wasn't even really seeing anything anymore. It's just a foggy faint image when I even try to remember. I don't know what else happened to him other than that. I remember hearing the first guy calling to me, telling me there was space for me to crawl through now, for me to hurry up. He sounded incredibly panicked. This kind of snapped me out of my stupor. I was like a deer in headlights for a while. All I could do was just stand there on the spot and watch. But I remember that just before I rushed for the crawl space, I saw A still trying to crawl towards me. His face looked horrible. He had this rash on his face. The veins on his cheeks were raised. His face was completely pale, and this rash looked tinged this black color. All of his skin was just raised and bumpy, but it was black. He was just wheezing, and he was coughing up some kind of thick mucus that looked like tar. He was trying to speak, but he was just gargling whatever this liquid was. I just rushed to the crawl space. There was nothing that I could do. I didn't know what the hell that thing was. I just had to get out of there. When we finally got out of there, neither of the two of us knew what to say. It took a little while for us to be pulled all the way back up. It gave me a lot of time in silence to think, but mostly, I think I just spaced out. I could not get that image of a sickly face out of my head, gargling that liquid and trying to speak to me. I wondered if he was trying to ask for help. I wondered if maybe he was trying to beg me, that maybe he was hoping I might be able to save him. I felt like a monster. We didn't want to seem crazy to other people, but what could we really say? We couldn't exactly lie. It was not long before we were speaking to our superiors, who initially scoffed, but when they realized that we were serious, they stopped the talk immediately. I must have sat and waited for hours for them to arrive back with more people to sit in that room. They asked me to be 100% honest. After that, I was pulled off the team, and I was already bound by an NDA, so it didn't really matter all that much. I still am bound by one. I still work for those people in a roundabout way. Like I said, it's hard to explain and would take much too long. I was seen to by a psychiatrist for a long time. I had nightmares for a long time. I still do. I can't remember what bullshit story they fed me. The nightmares still have not gone away, even if it has been many, many years. I have no idea what I saw down there. I promise you, I am not crazy. I have an original story to tell you guys that happened to me. I'm a little foggy on the details, and I don't recall everything completely, but I will try my best. This happened to me when I was living in Florida. I was 19 years old or so at the time, living in the suburbs of Davenport. Myself, my brother, and my friend all went out for a walk one night. There were a couple of wooden areas in the area. We decided to go out late at night to the nearest one. It was known locally as the sand mine because there was a lot of sand, and supposedly the owner purchased it for that reason. It was probably 1 a.m. when we set out. It was pitch black. The three of us each had flashlights, maybe a little bit of food as well. After a little exploration of the area surrounding the woods, we set off down into a path. It's practically a tunnel, surrounded and covered by tree. It's so thick at any side that you could not break from the path even if you wanted to, until you reached the end of the tunnel. I was in the front of the group, and my brother and my friend were close behind me. We were using our flashlights. I was pointing mine ahead, and so was one of the other two, while the last person was checking the rear every so often. We had been walking for maybe 5 minutes or longer at this point. It was very eerie. There was no sound other than insects. The darkness was very real. There was no light other than our flashlights. Suddenly, I noticed a spider web in front of me, with a spider on the web. I told them to hold up, and I ducked underneath the web. I was paying closer attention to the web than the tunnel at this point. I was still bending my back just a bit to get underneath the web when I looked down the tunnel, pointing my flashlight ahead. I saw something I could not explain. It had 2 eyes, a yellow-white. They were pupilless, motionless, staring back at me. I was frozen still. I don't remember exactly what my friend or brother had said at that point, but it was to the effect of, "Oh fuck, what the fuck is that?" and "fucking run." I heard them start to move away behind me, but I was still staring at this for just a moment. Beyond the eyes I could see nothing. No body, no legs, just blackness in these floating eyes. The eyes were tall, almost as tall as I was. I heard my friend call, "Anon, come on." I snapped away, went underneath the web, and ran through the sand so fast. We did not stop until we had reached the main road. I still can't explain what it was that I saw, but it was as real as anything, and it made me understand that there were things out there in the woods. The fact that we all three saw the same thing is further proof to me that I was not seeing things. To this day, I am very careful out in the woods, cautious of what I know and what I do not. I was 17 years old around the time this happened to me. I was living in New Orleans, born and raised. I was talking with my friend in school. He says he's into voodoo. Turns out it's just a fake approximation for edgy kids. Most of the stuff he's talking about is not even proper voodoo. I find it amusing, so I play along. Friend invites me to a gathering. I say, sure, why not? Skip to the weekend. He and another friend pick me up. I carpool with his fake voodoo associates. They are literally just white stoners and edgelords. I have to suppress the urge to laugh. Around 30 to 40 minutes pass by. We stop in a field at the edge of the woods. We walk into the trees. It's pitch black, and the only light nearby is a flashlight. After a while, I realize that we are near a swamp. The party stops and gets everything set up. I did some research beforehand, and this is all fake and inauthentic. It's like if Wicca and Philema merged, incorporated some vague Hollywood voodoo symbolism, and was then re-misinterpreted by suburban potheads. Still pretty funny though. I'm not really paying attention until this one girl starts having this crazy freakout and calling out to a spirit. She's like shaking and shit. I start to wonder if I'm on any drugs. Suddenly, the fire that they started goes out. There is zero wind or even a breeze that could have blown it away. I make a spooky sound as a joke. Everyone looks at me like I've desecrated a precious tradition. The ritual continues. I am still just glazing over it in the hopes that we will get something to eat afterward. I start hearing distant animal moans. Maybe just a random animal. This girl's freakout continues. Those moans get louder. Oh shit. The others look terrified, like this is the first time anything has actually happened at one of their meetings. I feel something cold on my ear, and then there's another moan. We just break and run away as fast as we can. We hop in the van and speed away. The freak-out girl kept glowing about how they must have successfully called upon a spirit, like it's a good thing. I turn around and tell her it probably wanted them to stop fucking around with fake voodoo. I go home and never mention it to anyone until now. I have a childhood story for you all, if 12 years old counts. My aunt saw a Facebook listing for fake blood. It was near Halloween, and she wanted to do some zombie makeup, and it was from a guy who lived in a kind of a remote area, backwoods type cabin country. But if need be, You could reach a neighbor within 10 minutes just by running. Anywho, my aunt is not stupid and was not going to bring her and her children alone to some old man who lives in the middle of nowhere, so she brought my dad, who in turn brought me. I slept through most of the ride, I think, but when we got there, it was just off of a lake with a couple of other cabins in view just down a gravel road. But the guy's house was deeper into the woods than the others, and you had to go a little further in through his own gravel path to even see his house. So we turned the corner to where it should be, and the first thing that my dad notices is that there is a lineup of cars of every shape and kind. They don't look decrepit, they just seem like they were left there. I didn't pay any attention because I was a moron and 12 and was probably staring at my DS or some shit. What caught my eye was his rickety ass house. It essentially looked like what you would imagine a hillbilly would construct on his own. It was purple and shackish and had 2 floors which peaked like a barn does. The top floor was a bit more inward, creating a sort of rooftop ledge around it, and there was a wooden panel door with a rainbow peace sign spray painted on. The old bastard that owned the place came out in clean dress. He was bald and thin, kinda short too. He wore yellow rubber boots, despite it not being the weather nor the environment for it, and he had khakis on with a dress shirt tucked into it. So my dad just makes idle chit-chat, and my aunt is just kind of standing there, despite being the one who had business with him. He invites us inside his shack, and of course, to be polite, we follow him. It was kind of musty. We entered through some sort of laundry/living room hybrid. I remember there was stained carpet, and in the corner of an outcrop, there was an industrial-sized washing machine, and there was the smell of rot in the air that I did not notice until we took 3 steps into his kitchen. The thing that strikes me most about his kitchen was that it seemed out of place, like someone had cut out of restaurant's appliances and stuck them all in there. It was all stainless steel, like sheet metal, with pans hanging from a vent, I think. A vent-like thing on top of a prep table. In the corner of the room by the wall was a massive stack of plastic bins with nothing noteworthy in them, just that there were so many it went over my head. On top of one of them was like 4 kittens who vomited and shat while the old guy beckoned us further into his shitty house. It was like he was baiting us deeper inside or something. I can't even make it up. He was going, "It's just back here, it's just back here." There was also random chemical bottles strewn about the floor that's covered in cat vomit at this point. The most noteworthy thing was the bleach next to the massive all-metal fridge. Why the hell did he have a bottle of bleach just kicking around on the floor in his kitchen? Anyway, this crazy weirdo wants us to follow him into the next room, which is covered wall to wall in plastic bins full of random rubbish, floor to floor. But there was a clearing made for what I think was a green screen. It was just green sheet pinned from the roof that draped down around the floor, and in front of it was a camera on a tripod. This is when the alarms go off in my aunt's head, and she pretends my baby cousin, who she is holding, just spit up, even though it was pretty obvious that she didn't, and that she had to go back to the car to clean it all up. Me, being an asshole and 12 years old, leave my dad behind to fend for himself in that nutcase's house of lunacy. We wait like 10 minutes, and Dad comes back out, almost amused at the bizarre place he'd been walked through with the makeup paint, and we get the hell out of there. Fun story that we like to share around my aunt, even if it was a little bit creepy. This happened to me when a friend and I were walking downtown. We were coming back from an awesome smoothie place for lunch. In the distance, I see a man coming towards us. He is 6'7"-ish, probably only weighed about 140 pounds. He was wearing a faded black shirt, a duster, faded black jeans that were way too short, and black dress shoes. He's walking slowly, raising his feet really high in the air as he walks. It looks really unnatural. It's borderline Monty Python silly walk going on over here. My friend chuckles a little. What a weird dude. He gets close. He has black hair that's all slicked back. He has these protruding cheekbones. Think The Machinist. He has wide eyes bulging out of his face. He has these thin lips pulled towards his ears and this huge mouth. He walks right up to us. He thins his body down to like a 45-degree angle. His head is inches away from ours, right between us. It smells like rotten meat and dust. He just whispers, "Is it funny?" He doesn't move. We're paralyzed with fear. He just stands there, staring. My friend and I finally walk away. I turn back and he's still in that same position, but he is twisting his body so that his gaze can follow us until he's completely out of sight. That night, we both have nightmares about the man. Scariest moment of my life, by far.